This is a main share meeting, and this evening it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome our speaker, Brenda J, who has come to share on the topic of I Stood in the Sunlight at Last for up to 40 minutes, after which we're going to open up the Q&A portion of the meeting. Brenda, it's all yours. Thank you.
God, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I will help of your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always. My name is Brenda, a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Very happy to be with you today. Very grateful to God for this one more opportunity, this one more invitation. This one more invitation to create an awakening that is sustainable. I do have an anniversary this week. It's on the 3rd of July, and I will celebrate 35 years clean and sober. And you are my first stop. Every year I go on a little gratitude tour. For the first 2 weeks of July, you're going to be sick of seeing all the flyers with my name on it. But I try and get in front of as many people as possible, in front of as many groups as will have me, to come and say thank you, to come and bear witness to what a life looks like when it is surrendered on purpose. What a life looks like when all the steps are applied. What a life looks like when I have managed by the grace of God to take the words off the pages and write them on my own heart. And so a couple of housekeeping things. I have given myself permission to be imperfect and enough at the same time. I often need help to maintain a rational perspective. I reserve the right to cry, to have problems, to make mistakes. And it is of far greater importance to me than the time I've been here, but rather what I'm doing with that time now. I don't read the chat on Zoom. I did run into a young lady that said, I've been mad at you for 6 months. And I'm like, well, how was I supposed to know that? She's like, every time I saw you speak, I put it in the chat. I don't read the chat. So if you find something really objectionable, really like, who in the hell invited that woman to come speak to us? Young said that he would be available to field all questions, suggestions, improvements. Thank you, Young, for volunteering for that. You might have already guessed I'm not your ordinary bear. When you come hear me speak, I will rarely spend any amount of time on what I was like, because I have a feeling that I was like what you were like. And I focus my attention and my heart and my message on what I'm like today. What does it look like if you take a 24-year-old Hispanic woman dying from alcoholism and drug addiction by any measure, and take that life and rinse it in the steps of recovery? What does that look like after almost 35 years? I did pick this line. I don't want you to go read your book. Stay right here with me. Look, I'm going to tell you something. How many of us are there? 70. Look, we're not coming this way again. No matter how long we stay sober, no matter how many conferences, how many retreats, how many more Zoom meetings, this group of people under these current circumstances of our life, we're not coming again. This is it. You know, I used to go through my life thinking, I'll be better at that next time. I'll tell more truth next time. I'll be quiet and shy next time. God didn't give me a little light. I don't have a little light. I don't have a quiet message. I don't have a life that moves in shadows. I am out loud in front of everybody saying, I came all this way. That God came to meet me at the gates of hell. And now God comes to meet me in the moment. How do you go from one to the other? How do you go from the gates of hell to the moment of now? By the way, those of you looking for God, He always at the intersection of here and now. So if you're ever going to look for Him, that's where He's at. So I don't want you to go to your books. I want you to just let me do this. Okay? Just stay right here. Those of you playing friends with words or watching TV or whatever it is, I'm okay with that. But you need to know that I have done all this work and sat in all these meetings and cried all those tears and spoke all that truth and tried when I was tired, so that what I had to offer you today was something authentic, something real, something awake, something that's passionate. So in the book it says, despite the living example of my friend, Bill's friend came to his house and they were sitting at the table and he said, despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestiges of old prejudice. The word God still aroused certain antipathy. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, those feelings were intensified. I didn't like the idea. I could go for conceptions like a creative intelligence or a universal mind or the spirit of nature. But I resisted the thought that there was some czar of the heavens somehow, however lovingly his sway might be. I have since talked to scores of men and women who have felt the same way. And then this friend suggested to Bill this idea. Why don't you choose your own conception of God? Why don't you choose your own conception of God? And I'll stop right here to tell you that the first time they floated that idea with me, I'm like, okay, no problem. So I would take my pen out, and they're like, make God whatever you want. Well, if you get to know me, you know I needed to start with the word forgiving. You gotta be forgiving. Gotta love ice cream. And I made my list of what my preferences were. My conception of God only needs to make sense to me. This last statement, it says, the statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered for years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make a beginning. I saw that I could grow from that point. And by way of identification, I was 4 when I took my first drink. At the age of 12, I took it up as a career. I drank for the next 12 years and sobered up when I was 24. Don't do the math. Don't hurt yourselves. Let's see. I was 24. We're working on 35. I'm 59. Oh my God, that sounds fabulous. I drank until I couldn't. I drank enough. I drank enough alcohol and did enough drugs to give myself permission to lie. I drank enough alcohol and did enough drugs to give myself permission to walk away, to make excuses, to hurt the people close enough to me. And then I told them it was their fault for standing so close to me when I hurt them. If I could have drank one more drop of alcohol, I would have. And what happened to me is that I wound up as a 24-year-old in Alcoholics Anonymous, in Narcotics Anonymous, and I was at the end. You know, they say step one, there's a step before step one. I call it step zero. And step zero for me is the idea that this shit has got to change. The most honest thing I ever said to myself when I hit bottom were the words, I can't drink, I can't use, and I can't stop. I cannot drink, I cannot use, and I cannot stop. I need help. Somebody asked me, how do you know if you've hit bottom? It's got a really distinctive sound. And so from that day, I wandered in the rooms, and I want you to know that from the very beginning, I have been applying these steps to everything in my life. Everything. At first, I applied it to alcohol and drugs, 1 through 12, 1 through 12, 1 through 12. And then after I came a bit proficient at that, for the first 12 years of my recovery, my sponsors would not let me look up from my book. I'd be doing my work, working on whatever step, and then I'd raise my head and go, hey, I was thinking. They're like, no, go back. Where were we in the book? Or I'd say, I had this great idea. There's a woman, when I first came to the meetings, I'll share this story. When I first came to the meetings, there was a woman there, and you can imagine, I was a little, well, anyway. So she comes over after one of the meetings and she said, you need a sponsor. And I drew the short straw. So my name is Pam and here's my number. She said, call me. I said, when do I call you? She said, anytime you have an idea. I felt offended, but I wasn't sure why. There have been men and women who have walked before me in the light of these steps. So to those of you that are new, apparently in a minute we're going to have question and answer, which promises to be riveting. So write your questions down. I think every question that's asked in the room should be answered. But I want you to know that after I submitted the step work, after I submitted to the surrender, that everything about my life for a minute felt worse. I'm like, I got sober and I felt worse. Yes, that happened to me too. Because what really happened is that when I took a drink, whatever I was feeling, no matter what it was, I froze it and I put it in the freezer. And then somebody betrayed me and they lied and I drank about it and I froze the feelings and I put them in the freezer. We had some great accomplishment. We won that thing. We bought that thing and I felt elated and I drank at it and froze the feeling. And what happened was that I came to recovery and they unplugged the freezer. And everything about the life that brought me to you began to thaw. And I don't know when the last time you had frostbite was. I don't want to talk about the last time I had it. But I can tell you that as things began to thaw, as my fingers began to thaw, I experienced pain in that process. That's what happened to me. Now I'm going to meetings. I'm sobbing all over. I'm pissed off. I don't want what you have and I'm afraid you won't let me in. But everything started to thaw. And if something's bad and it thaws, you know it, right? So what was in the freezer was my grief. What was in the freezer was all that pain. What was in the freezer was everything I'd ever lied about. And the steps have been the examination of the freezer in its most simplest forms. I have had to go to that freezer and take this out and recognize it for what it was and stay with it as it thawed. Now, I sit with a lot of folks, and we get to that part when all that's left is for, when my mom died, when my mother died, the funeral home came and took her body, and I remember standing in the street after her body had been wheeled away in the hearse, and my family members had all kind of wandered into the yard and into the house, and I remember standing in that street. I have 27 nephews and nieces. I'm one of 9. I have 6 sisters and 2 brothers, and then a whole bunch of little great nephews and nieces. And I remember standing in that street by myself, watching that hearse as far as I could see it. And then making the decision to come in from that street and sat in the rocking chair that my mom sat in her last few months. And I went and I sat in that chair, and one by one, each one of those babies crawled into my lap. Each one of those babies crawled into my lap, and I would hold them and I would rock them in that chair and listen to them wail from the pain that they wanted Grandma. And they wanted to know why God took Grandma. And even then I was a storyteller, and I said, it's kind of like this, like a little bit underground. There's this great train, and it's got all these treats, and it's got all these great beds in it. And what happens when people leave is like they get a ticket, and they get to go on that train, and they go to happy places. And I'm thinking I'm doing a great job. I want y'all to know that none of those kids will get into Subway now. I may have taken it a bit too far. Everyone hydrate. Everyone hydrate. I didn't know when they were teaching me to pick up the cups and straighten up the chairs and move the ashtrays. I didn't know that we were on our way to that morning. I didn't know that when I was trying to be of service and taking 12-step calls and doing my work and buying highlighters unnecessarily. I bought enough highlighters to avoid enough work for a long time. I'm like, why you got 37 highlighters? Leave me alone. Because you can't really start your 4-step till you have the right highlighter. I had no idea that when those people in my life insisted on the truth, I had no idea that what I was doing was building the muscles to go sit in the recliner and hold those babies. I didn't know that what we were doing in my early sobriety was subjecting all my life to the light, to the sunlight. And I didn't know that I was in the darkness. I said to somebody earlier, God doesn't mind if I sit in the dark. He does not need light to exist. And God doesn't need my faith to help. But over and over and over, I have had the ability to continue to choose to stand in the sunlight. And when I stand in the sunlight, what I get to do is answer roll. For almost 35 years, they have called roll in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and I have answered here. I have been present and accounted for. I didn't go take a vacation for 12 years and then come back and pick up a chip. It's fine for all the people that have done that. That's not been my story. I started sponsoring women when I was 4 months sober. And God, because God knows me, gave me a really happy, chipper person to sponsor at 4 months. Then in the short order, she caught up. She caught up to me in the work. And I didn't know how to tell her, well, this is kind of where I am. So I would get the book and I said, read this page right here. This is the page you need to read because you don't know yourself very well. And she's like, okay. And then she'd take that home. And I still wasn't done when I met with her again. And I'm like, you clearly did not read it slowly. God loved that woman. She must have read that page like 5 times. She stayed on my heels. That's one of the gifts of sponsorship. She stayed on my heels, and I want you to know that I have had the opportunity to sponsor men and women with 5 minutes sober, with 50 years sober. I have in my own life. Listen, I got sober and I started college. I like came to in an English literature before the 1800s class. And I'm like, am I teaching this or am I taking this? Where am I? Because I surrendered to God. And when I surrender to God, anything can happen. Apparently, for those of you that don't know that, apparently anything can happen. You can go to college, you can live in Hawaii, you can be broke, you can have a disease, you can have all kinds of things. But when I surrender, I know it is unconditional because what I'm saying is what I'm doing is not working. The way that I am trying to solve my problems, my sponsor had me make a list of everything that was wrong in my life. I love these assignments. So I get this big old long paper and I write everything that's wrong. It was comprehensive, people. Then on the next side, she said, write down how you're going to solve that. And I'm like, oh, she's testing me. No problem. Next to every problem, I wrote a solution. And she looked at me and she said, when you get done with your side right here, come back. Because as long as you have a solution, you don't need a sponsor. I was not going to let her be smarter than me. I said, fabulous, I'll go do that. I almost died, y'all. I almost died trying to force my own solutions. And over and over and over, it's been about, are you awake? Are you standing in the sunlight of the Spirit or not? Part of why part of it, not me, but part of why people hate the topic of change is because there's no way to fake it. There is no way to fake change in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why come out, sometimes they want to talk about it. And I tell all my people now, listen, if in 6 weeks from now, you hear me talking about the same things that I'm talking about right now, say something. Say something. I want to have new problems. I want to have new awakenings. So look, I don't know, like if I was sitting on this meeting listening to me, I would wonder 2 questions right now. 1, what the hell are you talking about? And 2, how do I get there? What are you talking about? And how do I get there? So this is how I get there. So I wake up in the morning and there's something weighing on me. Okay? I just woke up. Something's already, all the voices in my head, they meet at night. Yeah, they have like all night meetings, all these voices, you know, the ones that say, don't trust the people in AA, the one that says you're not going to belong anywhere, you're not going to be important to anybody, nobody's ever going to like you, you're not ever going to accomplish anything, you've made absolutely, you know, those folks, they meet at night. And when I wake up in the morning, they've had a meeting and somebody already typed up the minutes. And before I get out of bed, one of them says, hey, listen, we met last night. And the pain in your knee, it's cancer. The people at work, they don't like you. They talk about you. You're broke. You don't have no money. Yeah, it's bad. And I haven't even got out of bed. My first sponsor, I would talk to her about that. And I'm like, and then they decide this, and then they decided that. And she's like, Brenda, Bring all the voices to a meeting, one of them is bound to get sober. There is no problem. There is no problem so big that God can't solve it. I am living proof of that. I am living proof that I can bring anything from the present, from the past, from the long ago, from another life, from another neighborhood. I can bring everything to the steps and have it completely restored. If you took a spiritual x-ray, and listen to me, I came down some long roads. The alcoholism and the drug addiction that I suffered from, it rode me hard and drug me through every alley we came to. I was so bloodied and bruised when I got here, I didn't recognize me. All of the light was gone. And I beg God for the end. I can say those words to you right now and feel that pain. That's almost 35 years ago. I can feel the pain of that surrender. Everything I've ever given to God has been broken. I have not returned one thing to God in tip-top shape. It's all been broken, and there have been several times in my life when I looked at the God of my understanding and said, I'm not sober enough for this. I can't do this. I was 32 years sober, so this was just a few years ago. And I called people that I knew and I said, I need help because I'm going to drink. People with 32 years sober, they drink. And I said, what meetings do you go to? Send me some meetings, please. I later found out that my friend Rodney from Albany, he was sending me meetings. Now, he wasn't going to any of them. He just randomly picking meetings for me to go to. Saved my life. And one day I called this woman. And I said to her, now look, I've been the poster child. I have been the one that has insisted on hope. And I called this woman and I said, I can't. And she said something that saved my life. She said, Brenda, all you need is courage. And you already have that. And then I chose, this is the important part right here. I chose to believe her. I chose to go to one more meeting. I chose to write one more inventory. I chose to sit in the class that had been assigned to me. A few years ago, we had a really bad drought here in Texas, and all of the riverbeds, they all dried up, and rivers and lakes that had never been emptied became empty, and they found these bones that belonged to a dinosaur that nobody even knew lived here before. And they were frantic about trying to get as many bones out of the ground as possible before it rained and filled it all back up, and meticulous, on their knees, touching the earth with smallest of instruments to get everything that they could. That's what happened to me when I had 32 years sober. I fell to my knees in the dirt of my own experience with the smallest of tools, picking up the pieces of a life that had been broken. And as y'all can tell by the deliciousness of myself today, I found all the pieces. I found all the pieces. I have been restored. If you do a spiritual x-ray or a CAT scan on me, you will not only not find anything that has been broken or betrayed, you will not even find a wound or a scar to mark its place. I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm awake. There have been long, hard days in sobriety. I went to a doctor recently and she's like, look, you got this thing. I only told one of my sisters. I think that was the only conversation. Well, and now y'all. Um, and she says, Brenda, that's a problem. And I looked at her and I said, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. My doctor has a problem. When my tooth hurt, I don't have a problem. My dentist has a problem. When my car doesn't work, I don't have a problem. My mechanic has a problem. I've come all this way and done all this work and cried all these tears and went to all those conferences and sat in all those uncomfortable chairs and did all of that. I didn't come all this way to be afraid now. I'm not doing it. I'm not. Now when something happens, I call a meeting in the broad daylight. I call a meeting and I bring all these so-called problems and I have make sure they're all seated at the table because everything that comes into my life is welcomed. Everything that comes into my life belongs here. They are who I am. And so I set all these unruly characters around the table of my heart. And then I said, wait a minute. What we're looking at that door right there. And all my problems and all my trials and me, we all turn around and look at that door because in a minute, the God of my understanding is going to walk through. And then I introduce the problems to God. And God looks over and goes, Brenda. And I said, yeah. He said, you look fabulous. I'm like, I know, right? And then God says, hey, did you see that? Did you see that sun last night when it was setting? Yeah, no, I got some new orange colors. I did. I got some new ones from Amazon. And so I just did a little shade of orange I've never used before. I said it's fabulous. It was great. And then God will say, hey, listen, I want you to know you're doing really great. You're stubborn as hell though. I mean, we still got things we need to work on, but I just want you to know that I love you. I love everything about you, Brenda. And I look at God and I'm like, well, I just, if I might comment, the quality of your work is also um you're doing good, God. And you look great for being old. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, I look up and all the problems, they went away. I didn't even notice when they left, but they were all gone. And then I get to say to God, they left. They left. They were just right here. And God's like, yeah, they they know that fear cannot sustain the grace. I'm a school teacher by profession. I teach 12-year-olds. I'm starting, I think, in a month or so, my 19th year. And don't get me wrong. The only thing I told God when I got sober and was in college was I do not want to be a teacher and I do not want to teach math. I teach all the kids that are just like me. I didn't speak English when I started school. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. There wasn't anybody that looked like me. Those are the kids I get this year. It's like working at the zoo. Teaching, don't tell my boss. It's like working at the zoo. All the other teachers, they want to take care of the rhinoceroses and the giraffes and the elephants, all the high ticket items, really, because, that's who everybody come to see. But all of a sudden, we got a shipment of seals. And they're like, well, we don't have a place for the seals. I'm like, what are we going to do? Are we going to let them die? What the hell? I said, I'll take the seals. And we'll take this thing right here. We don't know what it looks like. We're going to make that a home. Bring on the seals. And then all these seals started showing up and they're like, we live here. And I'm like, yeah, everybody start decorating. And I want you to know that those kids, for the entire time that I have been their teacher, have outperformed their counterparts. They don't speak English. They've never seen a computer. They say, oh, thank you so much. How do we turn it on? But I want you to know that those kids come every day to a teacher that is awake, to a teacher that loves them, to a teacher who looks like them, to a teacher that has opened her entire heart for their existence and their being. And there is no way, not on my watch, there is no way that those children are going to be left. I will fight you. I had a student at the end. I'm just going to share this. Sorry, I don't even know what time. Anyway, so I had a kid. Oh my God, this little baby, I call him my spiritual sandpaper. That little dude was helping me work off all my rough edges. And he says to me before his school was over, he says, Miss Hassel, he said, when I grow up and I have kids, I'm going to tell them all about you. I'm not ever going to forget you. And one day, I want you to meet my kids. Well, God, I'm probably going to be their teacher too. The sequel is always. Listen, I know that some of you leave at the end of the meeting and won't stay for the questions, and I just want you to know that it has been my deepest honor to be with you today, and I pray that all of God's love is mine. I pray that all of God's love is yours. I pray that all of God's love is with us all, this God, or something better. Amen. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, we've got Young first, please.
Thank you, Ella. Hi, my name's Young, recovered addict. Thank you so much, Brenda. I always feel it. I always feel your words, and I always say this to you. I wish you were my school teacher. Oh, love that. I would have loved that. I was one of those kids written off. But
Yeah.
my question. Thank you so much, and 35 years, and thank you for sticking around and inspiring people like me, which you do hugely. Right at the beginning, you said something like, I've taken the words off the page and I've put them into my heart. Was there a time when you realized that had happened, where it stopped being just mechanical and words and it started to be your flow? And that's it. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you. My father died on Christmas Eve of 2004. And we'd all gone home. The 9 of us had gone home, and everyone had gone to bed. And I was kneeling next to my father's bed, and I had recited every prayer. I had spoken every truth. I had come down long roads to be with him at that moment. And I was out of him. I was out of everything I could say. And then I started rocking him because he was afraid to die. And I closed his eyes and I knelt by his bed and I rocked him like this. And out of my mouth came the words, "Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path." And I recited the entire chapter word for word. And that's when I knew that it had in fact been written on my life. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Young, for your question. Next up, we've got Martin, please.
Thank you very much, Brenda. And I identified an awful lot with you. You know, I have the highlighters here. Martin, I'm an alcoholic and I'm an addict, and I didn't have to drink or drug today, thanks to God, as I understand them. And my question is a two-parter, kind of. I'm in early recovery, you know, I'm only 87 days, but I feel fantastic, and I found I've got my faith back. My question would be, what would your favourite prayer be? And apart from the third step prayer, and how do you practice your two-way prayer? Because it's something I'm trying to practice more often, is listening to God, not just getting on my knees and handing it over. I need to listen more. So how do you practice that on a daily basis? Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your question, and congratulations on your time. So my favorite prayer is the one that falls off my lips. Sometimes that is something that I was born and raised saying. Sometimes it was something I found here. My favorite prayer is the one that brings me closer to God. But to be more specific, one of the prayers that I love deeply is the Thomas Merton prayer. You can Google it. It says Thomas Merton prayer, and it starts with, "Dear God, I don't know where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me, and even though that's the prayer." And as far as the two-way, you stop it. I have never really done that because I never really understood it, because I wouldn't stop talking, and then God's like talking and we're both talking, and then we're all both laughing, and then all the other voices are chiming in. So I don't really know. I just know that if I put myself next to God, even if he whispers, I hear him. And even if I don't hear him, he helps me. There's no rigidity in that relationship. There's no way to do it wrong. The only way to do the steps wrong is to leave them undone. See, I was as little help as possible on that last question. Thank you. Next.
Thanks, Brenda, for answering that. And thank you, Martin, for your question. Next up, we've got Nikki. Nikki P, please.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, Brenda. Thank you so much. My question is, my name is Nicky, I'm an addict. But my question, Brenda, is what can you recommend for me to get such a convincing relationship with God that you have?
Thank you. And such a beautiful and passionate question. Thank you. And everybody can have the relationship I have with God. It's like the best thing I have to share. And one of the things that is integral at the very beginning of trying to establish this kind of relationship with God is to continue to come to the end of myself. I have to come to the end of myself before I entertain that there might be something outside of me. And so I'll give you an example. So if the boss is being completely unreasonable, they've been unjustified, they have demoted me and taken some money away, and I wake up with that, or I'm in the middle of the night awake with that, or whatever, I have this invitation. Others would call it a challenge, but it's not. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to say, God, none of the solutions that I can come to on my own will bring me the outcome I want. So I'm going to let you take care of them. I can start there. Just hand it over. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of things in my life that I could not carry all the way to God. There have been plenty of things that I could not carry all the way to God. And I found out in those moments that if I set it down, God will come by for it. God will come for it. Let it go. Let go right there. Thanks. I hope that helps.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your question. Next up, we've got Michael. Michael M.
Michael, recovered out. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Brenda, for your share. You absolutely lit the room up. I was hooked on every single word, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. You were talking about when you you wake up, the people in your head or whatever, the voices in your head all have a meeting, and then when you wake up, they're sitting there and they've come to the conclusion. I find that as well, obviously, because I'm also an alcoholic addict. And my question is, do you ever do stuff to answer, to quiet them voices, and then find you can't get yourself out that committee meeting? So yesterday I was really, I felt like I was in the spirit of the sunlight, and today I did literally almost exactly the same. And I'd get myself away from the meeting, and then an hour later it'd be back. Now, do you have a practice that can get you out of the meeting a bit longer than an hour or so? 24 hours would be lovely. Thank you again.
Yeah, no problem. And so here's something interesting about the voices. They don't have my best interest in mind. The ones that have my best interest in mind, those come to the meeting. And so here's what I have to do. I have to turn around and look at the voices as if they were a bunch of kids in a van and say, will you all please sit down and shut up? And this is what changed everything. I look at the voices and I say, sit down. You do not have enough information with which to participate. Somebody should write that down. I look at the voices. I look at my own mind. I look at my ego, and I say, sit down. You do not have enough information with which to participate. And before, I used to have to turn around and, God, could you tell that voice this? And could you tell that voice this? And now we're down to where I look at God and go, God, he's like, I got it. Yep, next.
Thanks, Michael, for your question. Next up, Dave, come on in.
Hi, Dave, addict. I actually put my hand down because Michael asked the exact same question that I was going to ask. But thank you for your answer.
No worries. Okay, so let's have Lavelle next.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys might be in this wonderful universe. My name is Lavelle Deshaun Johnson Sr. I'm an alcoholic. And my question is, why do you always get on my nerve when you talk? And why do you make so much sense? Because I love you.
Man, that's a good question. And I got an answer. I got an answer from a friend of mine earlier today. He said, Brenda, part of what makes you so hard to listen to is that what you share is soul shaking. Now, look, I didn't ask him if that was a compliment or a complaint. and so, look, I'm going to tell you something. For those people sitting around recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon, Narcotics Anonymous, for those folks sitting around all comfortable, my job is to make you feel uncomfortable. And all the people who are uncomfortable, thinking they don't belong, that there's not room, that they are different, that they will not, I'm here to make you comfortable. Not only is there a place for you, it's in the chair right next to me.
Thanks so much, Brenda, and thank you, Lavelle, for your question. Next up, we've got Olivia, please. Come on in.
Thanks, Ella. Thank you, everyone, for the meeting, and thank you, Brenda. That was amazing. I haven't cried at a share, I don't think, ever actually, and that actually brought us to tears. So thank you. I love your passion. I love everything about you. But my question is, when you had the situation going on when you were 32 years, when you felt like you were going to drink, what did your relationship look like with God then? What was that like? How did you kind of bring that back around?
Yeah, I remember it was 4 months after my mom had died, and I was praying all the time, and I couldn't feel God, and I couldn't hear him. And one day I'm like, really? Because I have I have surrendered myself to you. I am feeling grief the way I've never felt it. I have needed you more now than I have ever. And now you don't have anything to say? And God looked at me and goes, Brenda, I was listening. And that's what happened. That's what happened when I was afraid I was going to drink and when I was afraid I was going to die, is that I understood that God was listening profoundly. I had friends in my life that were listening to the words, but I had a God in my life that was listening to the spaces.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Olivia, for the question. And finally this evening, Charlie, come on in.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Charlie. I'm a great recovering alcoholic. I thank you, Brenda, for sharing the story. I apologize for coming in late. I wasn't able to get on, so I still did something wrong. Anyway, lately I've been hearing things from people about voices in our heads. And I relate to that because I hear a lot of stuff in my head that tells me lies, you know. And I can talk about that here. I can't talk about this on the outside. They'll call the men in the white jackets, because they'll think I'm nuts, But this here is my safe haven, and I do my best to stay in today, and to have God in my life. I do my best today. I stay out of my past. I don't belong there. And the past is not who I am. And once in a while, my brain will go a pair of legs and decide to go for a walk. And goes back with all sorts of lies. I can't believe every lie my brain tells me. I can't do that. And I just want to say that, I'm glad I found this meeting. And this is my first time here. So I want to thank you for your share. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks,